Here's the first example of us looking through our loading files and trying to be able to actually load tiles from a file, from a text file, and then trying to like retrieve the data from there and make sense of it. So this one's a little bit weird. It's just kind of the way it is, because what I found weird about when I was doing it was that I expected I had to like set the buffered reader up, and I had to like put it to the right spot, and how am I going to get it here, and how am I going to like all this stuff I was worrying about. But actually, it's a lot simpler than that. I mean, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like there's someone else somewhere else in the code. We don't have to worry about it. Somewhere else in the code, they have set up the buffered reader for us. They've loaded the files correctly. They've done that, and they've even pointed it right directly to this line of code. So like someone else has done that for you. For our test cases, they are doing that for us. Later on, as we develop this code further, like you will figure this out. Like you will call, whenever you call this method loadTiles, like the buffered reader will be, you'll have to make sure the buffered reader is pointed here. But we'll get to that in part 3 of this exercise, of this part of the project. So what we're going to get, we're going to have a text file. It's already going to be loaded, and the buffered reader is going to be pointing to here. So your goal is to interpret these 4 lines of code, and you will have to make sure that you don't read into this next line of code, like into like, because this is where our scripts are stored. We just want to look at these 4 lines, and oh, notice that the height here is 4, so that could be useful to use. We need to read through these 4 lines of code and then basically extract an integer value from this, and then use that integer value to find a corresponding tile, and then store that tile in a 2-dimensional array. So if what I just said makes absolute sense to you, great, skip this part. If that doesn't make sense to you, basically you're getting this, and your goal is to, we have this section of file, we want to read through only these 4 lines of code, and we want to do, I guess, yeah, let's see, we're going to start, we need to, oh, that's really not good. All right, that's a little bit better. So basically what we need to do is we need to go line by line through this, and we need to do, let's see, first thing we need to do, we need to get out an integer. So we need to extract an integer value. And there's like a little bit of tricky part to this, and maybe I'll come back to a second on that. But first thing we need to do is extract an integer value, which is a little bit harder than it seems, because as you can see, and maybe you've read further ahead, there's like A's and B's and C's in here, and like what the heck, how is that an integer value? We're going to talk about a little bit of hexadecimal stuff in here. But fundamentally what we have to do is we have to extract an integer value from each pair. So from each pair of data, each pair of characters, we're going to extract 1 integer value. Let's see, from that integer value, we have an existing method called tile.getTile, and we can pass that integer value into there. So we pass the integer value into tile.getTile, and that will return us a tile, which kind of, each number corresponds to a kind of a list of tiles that we have. So tile.getTile is going to look into the list and say, oh, you want a tile number 5? Here you go, here's lava. And it's going to give it back to you. Your goal with that tile is to then add it to a 2D array in the correct spot. And correct spot. Oof. I don't know if this is even helping with that bad of handwriting, but so like okay, well, what's the correct spot? Well, the first 2 characters correspond to the very top left of your array, of your map, I guess, and also the top left of your array. The 0 and 1 are going to correspond to the next spot, so kind of moving across that first row. And then we're going to go, yeah, so let's see, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We should have 8 spots across the top. And then as soon as we get to this one, and hopefully this is kind of obvious if we talked about 2D arrays enough, this will go down into the next row and we'll continue building. So extract an integer value from this, get a tile, collect a tile, and then add that to a 2D array in the correct spot. I'm going to talk more like in the text. There's going to talk more about like hexadecimal values, because these are actually stored. Each one of these two characters are hexadecimal values. So there's a really easy way of converting that, but I'm going to leave that for the actual for the text. So I think that's enough for now. Hopefully that kind of makes sense.